My name is Olivia. I am 27 years old. I live in a small apartment in Seattle with my younger sister Elena. She is 14 and still in school. We lost our parents when I was 19. It was sudden, and it changed everything. From that day, I promised myself I would keep Elena safe no matter what happened. To me, she is the only family I have. I work at a small pharmacy near the downtown market. The pay is not much, but it is enough for rent, food, and her school fees. At least that is what I believed when I first started there. It began one rainy night, much like the one I had just run through. The streets outside were dark and wet. My boss, Mr. Kareem, asked me to stay late. He said we had a big delivery to check. I needed the extra hours, so I agreed without thinking. The back room smelled of damp cardboard and chemicals. Boxes were stacked against the wall. Many had no labels at all. Some had dates that had already passed months ago. Mr. Kareem told me to put them on the shelves anyway. His voice was calm, but there was no kindness in it. I knew it was wrong. Selling expired medicine was illegal. But I stayed quiet, kept my eyes down, and did as he said. A week later, an old woman named Mrs. Parker came in. She was coughing so hard that she had to hold her chest. She asked for cough syrup. I handed her a bottle from the shelf. She smiled, thanked me, and walked slowly out into the rain. 2 days later, her daughter came in, angry and shaking. She slammed the same bottle on the counter. She shouted that the syrup was fake and had made her mother worse. Her eyes were full of fear. I froze. Before I could speak, Mr. Kareem came from the back and took the bottle away. He told her it was a mistake and replaced it with another one. He gave her a fake smile until she left. Then he looked at me. He didn't say a word, but I understood. I was not to talk about what I saw. That night I lay awake in bed. I could hear the rain hitting the windows. I kept thinking about Mrs. Parker's cough and her daughter's angry, worried face. My chest felt heavy. I knew I could not just forget. I decided to start keeping a record. I bought a small notebook and kept it in my bag. I wrote down the names of the products I thought were fake and the dates I found when no one was watching. I took photos with my phone. I hid everything in a flour tin at home, behind a bag of sugar. From that moment, fear became my shadow. I checked over my shoulder when I walked home. I noticed every car that slowed down on our street. I told Elena never to open the door for strangers. She asked why, but I only told her to trust me. The less she knew, the safer she would be. One night, we got another late delivery. At the pharmacy, 2 men came in carrying large boxes. Their shoes left wet marks on the floor. They went straight to the back. I heard one of them say, "No paperwork tonight." My heart began to pound. I stood in the doorway and lifted my phone to take a photo. The click of the camera was soft, but one man turned around. His eyes met mine. I quickly lowered the phone and pretended to sweep the floor. My palms were wet with sweat. A few days later, strange things began to happen. A black car appeared outside our building. It stayed there for hours, engine off. Windows dark. No one got out. One night, close to midnight, someone knocked on our door. The knock was slow, like they wanted me to listen. A man's voice said he was our neighbor, and that there was a water leak downstairs. But our downstairs neighbor was an old woman with a soft voice, and this was not her. I didn't open the door. I stood still until the footsteps faded away. The next morning at work, Mr. Kareem asked about Alina. His voice was smooth, almost friendly, but I felt a cold weight in my stomach. "She's fine," I said, trying not to show fear. He smiled in a way that made my skin crawl. That night when I checked my phone before bed, I saw the message. "Stay quiet. Think carefully." My fingers felt numb. I knew I needed help. I thought of my old friend Sarah. We had gone to school together, and she now worked as a nurse at a hospital in the city. She had always been honest, even when the truth was hard. I called her and asked if we could meet. The next day, I took my notebook, my phone, and all the photos to her. We met in the hospital cafe. The smell of coffee mixed with the sound of rain outside. I told her everything. I spoke quickly, afraid that if I stopped, I might lose the courage to finish. She listened without interrupting. When I was done, she took my hand and said, "This is serious, Olivia. You can't keep this to yourself. It's dangerous for you and your sister." Sarah told me about a man at the hospital who worked as a patient advocate. He helped report unsafe medical practices. She said we should speak to him first, before going to the police, to understand our options. I agreed. We made a plan. I would make a second copy of all my notes and photos. Sarah would keep one set in her hospital locker, and I would keep the other hidden at home. If anything happened to me, she could still act. When I left the hospital, the black car was there again. This time it was parked near the bus stop. I didn't look at it. I walked to the corner, my bag heavy with the envelope. I thought of Alina's smile when she told me about her math test. I thought of Mrs. Parker coughing in front of me. My fear was real, but my reason for acting was stronger. That night, rain covered the city like a blanket. I sat by the window with a cup of tea. The street below was quiet, but my thoughts were loud. Alina was in her room doing homework. I told myself I would not run away from this. The secret I carried was dangerous, but the truth was more important. I didn't know what would happen next. I only knew that tomorrow I would take the next step. The next morning, the rain had stopped. The air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. I stood by the kitchen counter drinking coffee and thinking about my plan. Alina sat at the table eating cereal. She looked up at me and smiled. I forced myself to smile back, but my thoughts were already far away. I had the envelope in my bag. It held my photos and notes. Today I would take it to Sarah so she could make the second copy. I checked it twice before we left the apartment. My hands were cold even though the room was warm. We took the bus together. Alina talked about her science class. I listened, but I was also watching the people around us. A man in a gray coat sat across the aisle. He was reading a newspaper, but every now and then I felt his eyes on me. When we reached her school, I walked her to the gate. Be safe, I told her. She laughed and said, you too. The hospital cafe was busy when I arrived. I found Sarah near the window. Her hair was tied back and she had a notebook open in front of her. I gave her the envelope under the table. She slipped it into her bag without looking inside. We'll copy everything tonight, she said softly. Then we talk to the advocate tomorrow. I nodded. My stomach was tight. I wanted this to be over, but I knew it would only get harder. On my way back to the pharmacy, I noticed the same gray coat from the bus. The man was walking on the other side of the street. I told myself it was a coincidence, but my legs moved faster. When I reached the store, Mr. Kareem was in the back. The air smelled like strong disinfectant, too strong for normal cleaning. He came out wiping his hands. Olivia, he said, we may get an inspection next week. Make sure everything looks perfect. His eyes held mine for a second too long. The day passed slowly. Customers came and went. I kept checking the clock, waiting for my shift to end. Just before closing, a delivery truck arrived. This time it was earlier than usual. I helped carry the boxes in. My hands touched one that felt lighter than it should. I set it down and quickly opened the side. Inside, instead of medicine, I saw rows of small bottles with no labels. My heart raced. I closed the box before anyone saw. That night at home, I called Sarah. Again, I told her about the delivery. She said we should add it to the report. She also told me that the patient advocate had agreed to meet us tomorrow afternoon. He's careful. She said he knows these cases can be dangerous. I slept badly. Every sound in the hallway made me sit up in bed. Around 3:00 in the morning, I heard footsteps outside our door. They stopped for a moment, then moved away. I didn't open the door. I stayed awake until the first light came through the window. The next day, I met Sarah in the hospital lobby. We went to a small office on the third floor. The patient advocate's name was Michael. He was in his 40s with kind eyes and a calm voice. I told him everything from the expired boxes to the late-night deliveries. I showed him the photos on my phone. He looked at them carefully. This is serious, he said, but we have to be careful. If we report this the wrong way, they may hide the evidence. He explained that we needed proof from more than one person. If another worker spoke up, our case would be stronger. I told him that no one else at the pharmacy would dare to speak. He said then we would need more photos, more dates, and clear links between the fake products and the customers who bought them. Sarah put a hand on my arm. You don't have to do this alone, she said, but I knew that if I didn't go back and collect more proof, nothing would change. I agreed to get more, but my chest felt heavy. That afternoon, I walked back to the pharmacy with my bag pressed close to me. The black car was parked 2 blocks away. I turned down another street to avoid walking past it. Inside the store, everything looked Normal. Mr. Karim was in his office talking on the phone. I started restocking shelves, but my eyes kept going to the back room. At one point, Mr. Karim left to get coffee. I slipped into the back and took 3 quick photos of the unlabeled bottles. I wrote the date on a sticky note and stuck it in my notebook. My hands were shaking so much that I almost dropped my phone. When I left work, the air outside felt sharp and cold. I walked fast, but near the bus stop, someone brushed past me from behind. My bag slipped off my shoulder. I bent to pick it up, but when I stood again, the person was gone. My phone was still inside, but the envelope I had kept in the side pocket was missing. My heart dropped. I called Sarah as soon as I got home. They took it, I said, my voice shaking. The envelope is gone. She told me not to panic. She still had the copy we made last night. Relief washed over me, but it lasted only a second. If they knew I had the envelope, they knew I was collecting proof. That night, I moved the flour tin to the top shelf in the kitchen. I locked the windows. I even pushed a chair against the door. Elena noticed. "Liv, are you okay?" she asked. I told her. I was just tired from work. She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling. The city outside was quiet, but inside everything felt loud. I thought about Michael's words. I needed more proof. But the more I searched, the closer danger came. Still, I knew I would keep going. I couldn't stop now. The rain began again, soft at first, then harder. I closed my eyes and listened. Tomorrow I would go back. Tomorrow I would try again. Morning came gray and wet again. The air smelled of rain and salt from the harbor. I sat by the window for a moment, watching the street. Cars moved slowly over the wet road. My chest was tight, but I also felt a strange kind of strength. Today I would not hide. Today I would take the next step. I made tea for Elena. She rubbed her eyes and smiled faintly. "You look worried," she said. I told her. I was just tired. She packed her school bag. Before we left, I reminded her, "Go straight home after school." She didn't ask why, but her eyes showed. She knew something was wrong. We walked together to the bus stop. I left her at the school gate and turned toward downtown. The streets were still damp, and the clouds hung low. I kept scanning the sidewalks, looking for anyone familiar. At the pharmacy, the lights were already on. Mr. Karim was in his office talking on the phone. His eyes followed me for a moment before he turned away. I put my bag under the counter and started checking shelves. A woman came in with a young boy. The boy was coughing badly. She asked for cough syrup. I made sure to choose a safe, real brand, even paying part of the cost myself. I couldn't let her take one of the bad bottles. When the store was quiet, I slipped into the back room. I opened one of the new boxes. Inside were small bottles with no labels. My heart pounded. I took quick photos and wrote the date on a piece of paper. As I slid it into my pocket, I heard footsteps. Mr. Karim stood in the doorway. "Busy morning?" he asked with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I told him I was just checking stock. He told me to leave the boxes alone and walked away. My hands were still shaking when I returned to the counter. At lunch, I texted Sarah. I have more proof, she replied. Meet after work. Her short message made my heart race faster. Later that day, a man in a gray coat came in to buy gum. I had seen him before, on the bus outside the store. He paid and left without a word, but I felt his eyes on me the whole time. Near closing time, a delivery truck arrived. The boxes had a fake company name on the label. I signed the sheet, folded it quickly, and hid it in my apron. This could link the deliveries to the store. When I left work, the streets were almost empty. I heard a car engine behind me. It slowed to match my pace. The window rolled down a little. A man's voice said my name softly. You should stop, he said. Think of your sister. The car drove off before I could move. Fear made my knees weak, but I kept walking. I went straight to the hospital to meet Sarah. We sat in a small office with Michael, the patient advocate. I showed them the photos and the delivery sheet. Michael's face was serious. This is enough to start a case, he said. But it will put you at risk. My stomach twisted. Still, I said, file it. Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. Michael warned us not to go home alone tonight. Sarah invited me and Alina to stay with her. I called Alina and told her to meet us there. When she arrived, she looked worried. Is this about your work? She asked. I told her I would explain later. For now, we were safe. That night, Michael sent me a short message, report filed. Inspectors tomorrow. I barely slept. Early the next morning, Michael called. Again. The inspectors wanted me there when they went to the pharmacy. Sarah stayed with Alina at the hospital, while I went with Michael and the inspectors. We arrived before the store opened. Mr. Karim came in a few minutes later. His face turned pale when he saw the badges. The inspectors went straight to the back room. They opened boxes, checked dates, and took photos. They found the unlabeled bottles and sealed them in bags. One inspector told Mr. Karim to wait by the door. A police officer soon arrived. He spoke quietly with the inspectors, then turned to Mr. Kura. Karim, you are under arrest, he said. Mr. Karim looked at me for a long moment. His eyes were full of hate, but I didn't look away. When they led him out in handcuffs, I felt my fear begin to fade. The inspectors thanked me and said the store would be closed. They promised to follow up with the customers who might have been hurt. Outside, the rain had stopped. I called Sarah to tell her it was over. Alina's voice came through the phone. Next, bright and light. Can we go home now? She asked. Yes, I said. Home. A week later, we moved to a new apartment on a quiet street. The windows looked out over a small park. The black car never came again. I slept through the night for the first time in months. I never went back to the pharmacy. Instead, I began helping Michael's team. I spoke with people who had been hurt by bad medicine. I told them to check dates, to ask questions, to protect themselves. I had lived in fear every day. But I had also learned that love can make you brave. And for Elena, I would do it all again.